My job was to develop a collection, and what did that mean, and how does that happen, and establish a gallery with regular hours, which at that point the university didn't have. There was an art department, but not a gallery dedicated to changing exhibitions and so forth. So, I was formerly a museum director. I'd worked at the DIA, done all kinds of things. It was great fun. But I always had, there was a staff, there was a system, and you kind of plugged into your part, and you did it. Well, we had no such thing, nothing to plug into. You just had to make it up. So we did, and we had a lot of fun doing it. Now, flash forward 25 years. I worked at Grand Valley for 24, I think. And what you see is an art collection that now numbers over 25,000 works of art, thanks to many, many generous donors. And I think we now have 7 galleries throughout the university, 130 buildings in the university's collection of buildings, and on a number of campuses now. I don't know how many we have anymore, I've lost track, but every building is filled with art. And so in many ways, the fantasy and our dreams actually came true, because Don's vision was put art everywhere. It will make people stand up straight, it will make people behave better, and it will make them stop and look and interact with the art. And all of that is good for the university, but we don't even know yet what that means, right? What else do I need to do? Okay. And so, that's how it started. So now let me get you some details about this collection, because I know you're here to see this and to learn about this. So this is the Alten collection that came to us from Mr. and Mrs. Gordon, George and Barbara Gordon. Barbara is still very much with us. If you know that she's very much with us. George passed a few years ago at I forget how old he was. He was in his 90s, thank you. And he had a great life, and he was a very successful businessman. He's not of Gordon Foods, wrong Gordon. He is of Gordon of oil and, mostly oil and gas and things like that. So he did well. And as he did well, he developed his sense of love of art. He always liked art, he said. We had long conversations about it. But, he just bought things because that's how you start. When you first just love something, you just buy something, and then you buy more. And then you buy more, and then you learn a little bit about that. And then pretty soon you say, oh, this is better. I'm going to get this and sell that. Right? And so you upgrade this and you get rid of that, and it expands, and pretty soon he had a collection of dozens of paintings, and he focused on Mathias Alten. Not his first artist. There were other artists first, and as I said, he collected them and then he moved on. And so somebody else has those other paintings, and here's the good news, they also came to us from that other person. So, it's a small town. So, it's great fun. So the Alten collection came to us. The rumor is, and I don't know that it's 100% true, but the rumor is that George and Don Lubbers played golf, and Don let George win. And, it depends on your perspective and who's telling the story, but the outcome is we got 37 paintings, right? And they were placed here when this building was going up, so right around 2000. I think we opened in 2000, is that right? Because all those years just become one in the past. So at that point, when we opened, that window you see over there was here. Okay. And this was a room that was a kind of conference, study, living room. It had a big table in it, some nice comfy chairs, and it was just a place to meet, sort of an upscale place back here where we have a dining room and where we have an auditorium, and then this big hallway where things can happen. So it was the university's new entertainment center at the time, and this room was a little bit more private. And suddenly we got this fabulous gift of, I think it was 37 paintings by Mathias Alten from George and Barbara Gordon. excuse me, and my job, I was the new guy, right, whose job it was to put the art up. I thought, we can do that. And so we hung them in here in a salon style. You know, that's one on top of the other. And I like that. More is better in my mind. You know, I'm Austrian, and more is better. I mean, more dessert, more, you know, more whatever. So more paintings. And so 37 paintings came put in here. And people really liked it. They liked the paintings. They didn't really know anything about him, but boy, did we learn, right? And George was very happy with how we treated him, but also his gift, right? Because it was quite a gift. But George had a little problem, and we talked about this. He was addicted. He had an addiction problem, and the addiction was based on purchasing art. Once you hit it, you cannot stop. There is no cure. And I told him, you know, George, this is going to go on for a while. And he kind of admitted that's the way it works. So another painting. Pretty soon we literally had no room in this room. And all of that took a few years. And then it was decided we should expand this building. This did not exist. But we can't just expand it by one floor. You know, there are 3 floors. So let's expand it by 3 floors. And George helped with all of that, right? Because he is a very generous guy. And he had a lot of paintings. So we brought in more paintings. We hung them in here. The window, we don't waste. The window is over there. It's a Dutch thing. We never waste. We don't throw out. So we have the same old window. And we could tell with more paintings, we could tell a bigger story. That was kind of the whole idea. But how big is the story? Well, it turns out there's a catalog raisonné. You know, that's when it's a complete listing of every work of art by an artist, and you can always add more if you discover more. Well, I think there are about 2,000 works of art listed in Mathias Alten's catalog raisonné, and George had well over 100. Right? And in typical George's manner, oh, this is better. So we bought a better one. And so it came. And then, of course, once they came in here, they couldn't be framed in little living room style frames because, you know, the living room is 8 feet tall and things look more comfortable in 8-foot ceiling. When you have this, which is I think at least 15, maybe 12, 15, you need thicker frames, you need more presence, right? So it looks like it fits. And so everything was framed accordingly. Thank you, George. And so on it goes. And so the story is that we just kept growing. And then, is there more space? Well, there is. And upstairs on the 2nd floor above us, there is yet another gallery, continuation of this, of 2 more rooms, almost this big, not quite, and there are yet more paintings. So he continued to collect to the very end. In fact, when he passed, there are at least another, let's say at least a dozen very good paintings, you know, the ones he really liked, in his house, and Barbara is now guarding those because she knows we are at the door, snarling. But the plan is they too will eventually come to Grand Valley. So the collection, you know, George continues to give. It's really pretty astounding. And then the whole thing kind of grew. We decided, well, you know, there's so much interest in this. Let's create a Friends of Alten, right? A little membership group, because people were so interested. And we would do regular programs. We just had one a week ago that was very interesting. And they're usually themed around Alten in some form, artists related to him, his stories, etc., themes. And but what finally happens when you have something so wonderful like this, others want to join the bandwagon. And so there were a number of collectors in town. They don't have 100 paintings, but they had 1 or 2 or 3 really nice ones. And they wanted to be part of it because they came to that point in their life where, what do I do with this? And, oh, the kids don't want it, right? Always start with the kids. And then the grandkids, and they don't want it. Nobody wants your brown furniture. Nobody wants grandma's porcelain. And they don't necessarily want the paintings because it's another lifestyle, it's a responsibility, and what do I do with all of that? And oh, here's a place that's already doing that. And so Grand Valley became this day. And it's really a spectacular legacy on the part of George and Barbara Gordon. So now you've got the big picture. So who is Alten, right? Alten is a young man, was born in Germany. If you have time when we're done here, we can go upstairs. The other gallery is also open. There's a special exhibition related to Alten, but not Alten's, as far as I know. But the hallway has a storyline that you can take your time and read when he was born, where, and what the main events in his life are. But he was trained formally in the art of painting. He came here as a young man as an immigrant. We are a country of immigrants. And he married a local girl of German descent. And her family had a paint store and wallpaper store on Bridge, not too far away. And that store is now gone, but that's where they lived and worked. And he painted and she ran the store. And they had 3 girls. And those girls had babies, and the grandchildren of those girls, we still have 2 with us in their late 90s now. There's Anita Gillio, who, I don't know, she might be 110. I think she's like 96, 7. We're not really sure. She's not admitting anything. And then another daughter. And the third daughter, Gloria Gregory, has passed just a few years ago. But when the grandfather died, when he passed, Mathias Alten, the kids, the 3 daughters, got the estate, which really means they got hundreds of paintings. Because what do you do with grandpa's stuff, right? It's in the studio. And so they divided it amongst themselves, and then each of them had that legacy, and slowly, as one does, you start to sell things, and that's how these paintings came into the community. That all makes perfect sense. You're not going to keep 100 paintings from Grandpa, unframed in the basement, rotting, basically. So that's how that life continued, and then many people started to become aware of Mathias Alten, and they ended up in galleries, they became framed, and they became merchandise for others to purchase. And so George was one of those people, sort of on the extreme end of it, right? Mathias Alten married his wife. By all accounts that we know, it was a good marriage. It lasted, I don't know, 40 years, I think, or more. And they established his family and stayed here in Grand Rapids. He became arguably the best painter this West Michigan produced. Certainly Grand Rapids, as far as I can tell. And he chose not to move to New York or to Paris and live with other important painters in an important art center. Grand Rapids was not an important art center, it turns out. It's kind of shocking, perhaps, but it wasn't. And but he was the leader of the gang, and there were other painters as well. And so he just chose to stay around and to develop his art. And then he began to travel extensively to the Netherlands, to Germany, to Italy, to Spain. There were a number of trips, and it doesn't matter how often he went and when and all that. You won't remember that tomorrow. I won't remember it in 10 minutes. So basically, he did a lot of travel, and he met other people. He saw other art, and he was influenced by them. And he just evolved his visual vocabulary. So you start off in West Michigan. You paint what you see around you, which in his day was a lot of farmland. Right? Beautiful farm country. What's interesting, if you look at those early paintings, there are no cars, there are no trains, although they existed. Right? He was interested in painting the memories of his youth, this sort of idealistic landscape, which we all think about, of our grandfathers and great-grandfathers and so forth, that they lived in. May not have been that idealistic, but visually, it was a beautiful place, right? And so that's what he painted. And that's what the local community that bought art not a big community, but that art buying community, that's what they wanted over the living room. And then he expanded. He was so talented, he could also paint portraits. Well, there's nothing nicer than a portrait of Aunt Hilda, right? Or Grandpa Jones, or whoever. And so they continued. And then pretty soon, because this is a town of churches, pretty soon every church's parlor needed a Mathias Alten in the parlor, because that's what you do. And so he was selling regularly his whole life. And he was selling very successfully. And but what happens after a while, if you're an artist, you get bored with that same. Right? And so how do you expand your visual vocabulary, and how do you expand your clientele? Who's going to buy another Alten if I already have a landscape, and we already have Grandpa's portrait and so forth? So what you do is you get out and you paint and discover new landscapes, new colors, new themes. So when I'm done talking, we can walk around and just look at things. He went to the Netherlands and he painted Dutch scene. How smart is that, living in Grand Rapids, right? Because that's what people remembered from their childhood or from their grandparents' stories. And many, of course, wouldn't necessarily be able to go there. So here is a little piece of the past now in my living room. And then he went, one of the big changes in his life is to go to, when he went to Spain. And that was a big change because what Spain had that West Michigan didn't, and what Holland didn't, Holland, the old country, is sun, right? And the light that comes with sun. I mean, we all crave it in, February, March. And so he went to Spain, and these paintings over here are all the Spanish views. Come on in, let's move around a little bit. Where he painted scenes that you're not going to find in Grand Rapids. So cows, bulls pulling boats out of the water. Not a typical Dutch scene, right? And look at the bright sun that he captured in his paintings, because the one big difference is in Spain, there is always sun. It's bright and sunny, and if you've been there, you know that's what it's like. Kind of a little bit like going to Florida. Except the scenes are different, right? And when he came back with these new visual vocabulary paintings, people wanted one. Oh, I like this. I want one of those, right? I want a big one for the living room. I'm tired of the Dutch landscape. But look at this beautiful painting. I think this is a particularly handsome one because there's nothing's happening here. But if you listen very, very carefully and you're very quiet, you'll be able to hear the buzzing of the insects. Right? And I think I can hear them, and you can feel the heat that the painting emanates. I mean, that deep, beautiful shadow, and on that hot sun over here, you want to stand in the shade, not in that sun. And you can hear the water, right? And he just really captured the atmosphere of the painting by giving us a realistic scene. We've seen this scene many times as we travel, but we can almost hear it and feel it. And he was particularly good at that. There was a Spanish painter, Sorolla, who he saw when he was in Spain, his work he saw, and that he admired, and he was very much influenced by his work as well. They're very similar in their painting visual vocabulary, but very different in their methodology. And we don't have a Sorolla yet. Things can change. But this is sort of typical of what he brought back from Spain. And so now he's expanded all of his visual vocabulary dramatically. And pretty soon people were also asking for still lifes. I'd like a big floral still life for the dining room. Or I would another kind of still life with bowls and fruit and that sort of thing. And he could paint anything, and he did. But once he went to Spain, the color in his paintings became very bright and very warm. And he didn't go back to the dull grays that are around the corner in the Dutch paintings. Because it's not that he was dull or bored, it's just what he saw. He painted what he saw, right? The warm gray light of the Netherlands. I've seen it and experienced it on many occasions. So he just evolved and grew and became quite a painter, and also took on students. He had a number of students, and we now know that he also traveled with his students, or some of it, and when I say students, I mean 1 or 2 at a time, not a class of 30. And he would go to Spain, or he would go to Germany or Italy or wherever it was he was going, and a student might come with him. Now, these are not 18-year-olds. These are mature artists who were already established artists. So he just grew as a man and as an artist, and would go back and forth, and sometimes he would leave his family, for a year or 6 months. I mean, imagine that could not be easy while you're raising, the wife is raising 3 daughters back home and running the store at the same time. So, you can only imagine there were conversations, right, between them, and they figured it out. But I do know that at one point he took a year with his family, with the wife and all 3 girls, and they went to live in the Netherlands in a town called Scheveningen, which is on the coast, and which no non-Dutch native can pronounce, right? Scheveningen, it's a great word. And so the girls went to school, and he painted there, and we have a few of those paintings as well. He died in the 30s, I think 38, and we have, I don't think it's out right, is that portrait there? No. So I think that portrait is actually, my next point, is actually traveling. There is an exhibition of, I think, 50 of our paintings from this collection, currently in Lansing at the Michigan Historic Center. And it's a fabulous little show, and it has some of our very best paintings. And his last portrait, which we own, where he's wearing a white shirt, a tie, holding his palette, and painting in a clean white shirt on his canvas, and you're thinking, no, not so much, right? This is how you want to present yourself, and it's great fun. And he presents himself in a very formal manner, like, take me seriously, I am a painter, this is what I do. What's so interesting about that painting, we actually own that palette that he's holding, and which is great fun, right? Now, what happens when the artist passed, it was filled with paint, because that's what you do. It's just filled with paint. And oil paint doesn't dry overnight, so it can stay lively for a while, and you put more linseed oil in it, and you make it smooth and usable. Well, Gloria, who I love dearly, and may her memory be a blessing, decided before she gave it to us, we got to clean it. I'm Dutch. And so, it's all gone, and we have this beautiful palette. But we know what it looks like based on the painting that he actually used. So these are just these funny little stories. There's another one, there were 2 sisters and a cousin, and the 2 of them are, as I said, are still with us. When they would all get together here in the gallery, they were great fun, because they were very smart women, but they could never agree on anything, right? So we have a painting around here somewhere which shows all of them as little children, and they would argue as to who is who, and that's my dress. No, you were allowed to wear that on occasion. It's really my dress, and that's me, and it was just great fun to listen to them hold their family discussions. So that was great fun. All right, so I think that's the big picture I want to share with you, but I don't want to talk at you the whole time. So do you have any questions that you'd like to ask about anything? And if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up, or I'll point you in the direction. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
What's the approximate value of the collection?
Okay, so that's an awkward question, because let me just say, the paintings, you mean this particular collection?
Well, I mean
the university's collection. Well, let's just say it's safe to say many millions, right, in time, because they obviously grow in value once you have them. An Alten could be had for a couple $100 20 years ago. Not so much anymore, right? A major Alton, let's say like these, might go into the 5 figures, even 6 figures these days, depending on who's willing to write that check and what numbers you're willing to put down. But they've all gone up in value tremendously, right? And people have often asked me, well, how do you know, how is it safe to have them here like this? And the answer that I always gave is A, they're bolted, B, you'll be electrified if you try, and C, you're on camera. Some of that is true, okay? And I'm just saying. But we bolt them so not so much because we're worried about theft, but to keep them straight. You know, there's cleaning staff that comes in and they dust carefully and so forth, and you don't want the painting start to look dishabillé. So that's one reason to do it. But you know, in my 24 years at Grand Valley, I can say to you that we have never had a theft. Knock on wood. It just didn't happen. And part of that was Don Lover's vision. You know, if you put it in front of people, they will live up to it. And I think that really has happened. We've not had desecration of any kind. We've not had any, you know, slashes or anything like that. If anything has ever happened, some of our artwork has plastic, plexi bins over them for protection. And sometimes kids who have these gigantic backpacks forget just how big they are. And we've had a couple cracks, but the art has never been damaged. And it just hasn't happened. You know, it's part of our philosophy. Yes, ma'am.
What school would you call him?
He is, I think, romanticism, late 19th century, even though he lived mostly in the 20th, early 20th. It's romanticism landscape. It's not hyperrealism, you know, which looks like photography. That came later. And it's not, it's a little bit impressionism, right? It's this mix of things. And especially once he came to Spain and discovered the sun. I mean, if you look at the way these leaves are painted and you come up close to them, they're just dabs of paint. Right? He's not trying to paint each leaf separately with every little vein in them. He's giving you the impression of a leaf. And step back a little bit and you get the tree. Right?
Are there other big Alton collections elsewhere? I mean, like in the world?
Well, I'm happy to report this is the largest collection of Altons at Grand Valley that there is, that we know of. And I say that because of the catalog raisonné, which lists who has what. There is no collection as big as this anywhere. People have a dozen paintings and even more, but not the number that we have here. We also have drawings now of his, and I think he did a few, I'm trying to remember, he did a few prints as well. But mostly he's a painter. Yeah? There was another, yes, sir.
In joke for the crowd, have you considered making any NFTs?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Have you considered making NFTs of these?
Oh, I have not, because I don't have a clue what that means and how that works. And I missed the lecture, right? I know, I should have listened in, but you know, I'm of that generation. And this just shows you how old I am. I don't care. I really don't. I'd rather have the real thing. And if I can only afford a little one, then I'll buy a little one. But I'd rather have it be the real thing. Yeah. But you know, I understand the joy of owning an image. When I was a student, I had no money. I bought posters of my favorite paintings and hung them up, like on a clothesline in the living room because it was a great visual, right? I can't bear naked walls, right? To me, the fun thing about Grand Valley, when I got a floor plan for the next building, I never had input on what the building is or does because that's not my job. I got the floor plan after all those decisions had been made. And on the floor plan, which thank God I knew how to read, right, there would be a screen here and a bulletin board here and a whiteboard, and it was clearly marked where these things were going. But if there was nothing there, it was a blank spot. And a blank spot to me meant an art opportunity. So if I could afford it, I'm putting a piece of art there. And so there was, a lot of it. I think we have, out of the 25,000 works of art, more than half are actually on view throughout all the buildings. So that's kind of fun. Yeah, and they're still there. And what, it started, and I know kids because they told me this, they would use the art as a pathfinder. Make a left at the Gauguin, turn right at the Van Gogh, whatever it was, right? And eventually the teachers and the faculty said, oh, this is an image we could use in our curriculum, whatever that was, math, history, science, literature, and we could use that. And one of the things we did early on, because we are a university and we have a lot of smart students, way smarter than I am, we created a system, an online system, to put every work of art online. So that means every work of art is accessible to everyone. Even if it's in storage, the online indicator will tell you where it is, and if you want to see it, you just make an appointment to see it. But if it's in building C and whatever campus, you can go see it. Right? So that enabled people to be in touch with the collection and to actually see it in person. And there's nothing like seeing it in person, right? I mean, you can look at images, PDFs, and whatever they are, and enjoy that, but the real thing is always just a tad better, I think. There was another question.
I believe, Henry, that he did a couple large paintings that were in one of the banks of Grand Haven at one time. When we go to the art museum here,
Yes, and then do you know the next story? Okay, so yes, he was commissioned to paint 2 murals for a bank in Grand Haven. The bank eventually shut down. The murals were actually on canvas and were donated to the Grand Rapids Art Museum, which then moved into a new building and didn't want to use all that wall space for these 2 paintings. And then I got a call one day and said, so Henry, you want some paintings? and that's exactly what happened. They were transferred, we didn't buy them, they were transferred to Grand Valley's collection, and they're actually in the library across the way. As far as I know, they were there a year ago. Now, I am now retired, so I don't know what gets moved around, but I assume they're still there. Okay? But if you go online to the art gallery, GVSU Art Gallery, and you click on collections, and you write in his name, Alten, all the works we have by him will come up. And we'll tell you where they are and all the information about them, how big they are. So the only thing we never discuss is their value, right, obviously. But beyond that, we try to give you as much information as we can. Was there any other question? Yes, sir.
Having had an office here, in a couple of buildings, the impact of the art is really powerful because you open your door and there's usually a painting or a work of art right outside your door. And me or other people, they would take that personally, So
yes.
If they didn't like it, they'd go like, oh, why did they put that here?
Right.
Or I love that painting. Or,
Yeah.
But
It's true.
It is really noticeable and it was really powerful in the building.
Right. Well, thank you. Well, and there are times when you just don't like it, right? I mean, it's okay. You don't have to like everything. So we would get calls. I'm new here and get up every day and I look at this thing and I really don't want to look at it. Could we move it? Well, of course we could move it. Yeah, and so we did, and we replaced it with something else. But we got better at it in time because we would talk to deans who were getting ready to open their building and then to some of their faculty. And so say we would learn, for example, that on this corridor there were 3 new professors from China. And so, I'm take that input and put some works that we acquired in China and put it in that hallway. Everybody noticed. Yeah. So that was nice. Any other questions?
Henry, do another tour of Seaman.
Do another tour.
Another art tour. I don't know how long, that was maybe 10, 15.
A long time ago. I don't even remember. I remember doing it. Yeah.
Another.
Well, thank you. Well, it's not up to me, but I'm happy to do those kind of things. So I hope you've been, if you haven't yet, to the new medical building. up on, kids call it Pill Hill, up on Michigan. That new building has 450 works of art in it, and they're pretty spectacular. That was literally my swan song, and we have some pretty spectacular things in there. And it's all free. You can go in anytime and walk around, and nobody will want to see your ID or see your ticket.
Interesting things. Years ago, just after the health science building, Cook DeVos was open,
The first one. Mm-hmm.
I brought a group, or I made arrangements with the Grand Rapids Public Schools and the Kent Intermediate to have people who were wanting to be in the health science professions take a class there. Now this is high school kids.
Right.
From all over Kent County and all over Grand Rapids. There was a big concern that these kids were going to get in trouble. They mark the art and they cause it. They never did.
No, but we lost a few to electrocution.
I wasn't aware of it.
No, I don't think it actually happened. No, it's true. You do think about these things, right? And another example of that is we put art in our dorms. And we started because the students asked us to. So I would give a presentation like this to a group of students, and I would tell them what I did and why I did it, and said, well, why is there no art in the dorms? Well, things come to mind, like why would we put art in the dorms where you party 24/7? And but we decided, yeah, let's do it. What can happen? So we started by whatever the next new dorm was, putting only student art in the dorms. And nothing ever happened. And we continued to do that, so all the dorms now have art in them, in the hallways and conference rooms. So, you just have to trust people and hope for the best, and sometimes it actually does work, right? And it's kind of fun. One of the things that does happen, don't tell anybody, is that most of these labels in the buildings are on Velcro, so they're Velcro to the wall, and sometimes students really enjoy playing with the labels, and so we always spend part of the summer, straightening that out. But it was just part of the fun of working at a university. There are a lot of advantages to working at a university, and students are certainly the big one, right? Any other questions? So, yes. Well, right now, because that traveling show is going on around the state, I think this is now the last venue in Lansing, the gallery was empty, and the staff put together an exhibition of Alten students. And I'm told it's open, so if you'd like to go see it, you can go upstairs. And have everybody been upstairs? No? Well, we can go upstairs if you like, and go see that show. But I don't think it's Alten works. I think it's Alten student work. And so these are the other artists in town who were influenced by him. And I understand it's a very nice show. So we can go do that. You can get up two ways if you're not familiar. You can go up the steps, one floor, or there's an elevator at the end of this, and we can take the elevator up. If you'd like to spend a few minutes and just walk around, and if you have any questions about a particular painting, I'm happy to come up with an answer. I didn't say true, I just said an answer. Well, let's take a few minutes and look around, and then we'll go upstairs, okay? Thank you.